Hello and welcome to Things Musicians Don't Talk About with your hosts Hattie Butterworth
and me, Rebecca Toll.
Within our vibrant musical world, it can often feel that the struggles and humanity of musicians is lost and restricted.
Having both suffered in silence with mental, physical and emotional issues, we are now looking for a way to voice musicians' stories, discuss them further and to connect with the many others who suffer like we have.
No topic will be out of bounds as we are committed to raising awareness for all varieties of struggle.
So join me, Hattie and guests as we attempt to bring an end to stigma by uncovering the things musicians don't talk about.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Things Musicians Don't Talk About. Today it's me, Hattie, just giving a little intro, a little update into us, what we're doing, before we get on to the episode with Guy Withers, who is the CEO of Waterperry Opera Festival, and we just love talking to Guy. Like, wow, you're gonna love this chat, I just know. But first of all, what's going on with us? Well, we just wanted to say that we're so thrilled to have given our first ever in-person panel discussion last week at the Royal Academy of Music alongside the beautiful Ellie Conster, our friend from her ensemble. Thank you so much to everyone who came, who shared, who listened, and who was just so honest with us about your stories and journeys, and who asked questions and really made us think about the work we do and how we can make it better and the conversations that need to be had. It gave us a lot of hope that there are people asking difficult questions that need to be asked. But yeah, it was also difficult to hear that obviously things that we've dealt with are still going on. You know, there's still a lot of work to be done within conservatoires and within classical music in general. But of course the first step to things changing is for organisations and institutions like the Royal Academy to have these conversations, and so we're really grateful that they wanted to open up that discussion and hope that we can continue some kind of dialogue with them and further afield and maybe do more of these kind of discussions in future, because it was just the best. Like, meeting people in person that have listened to the podcast is just like, I just felt so emotional. I just wanted to hug everyone so much and just say thank you for listening. You've made this such a beautiful space. But anyway, that whole thing of working differently, the whole asking questions, trying to do things in a new and different and more inclusive way is just something so at the heart of our guest today, Guy Withers. He was such a joy to speak to about his vision for an opera company and how he started the Waterperry Opera Festival a few years ago. I want to say it was 5 years ago. I should probably double check that, but yeah, Guy has a background as a singer and went to conservatoire and did that life as well, so he kind of has this incredible empathy and understanding for musicians and has become especially supportive of those early in their careers, because he obviously is aware of the difficulties that you might face. So yeah, he spoke to us about Waterperry Opera Festival, what it's become, the work that they do, the awesome things that are coming up. The festival runs from the 12th to the 20th of August in Oxfordshire and is combining performances of Mansfield Park, Peter and the Wolf, The Marriage of Figaro, and so many more. Wow, there's a big, awesome, exciting programme. You only have to go on their website to look at the little clips of the work they've done in the past to be I want to go, I really want to go and experience this. It's so different and so cool. So yeah, Guy's vision was that opera should become the creative, inclusive, expressive art form it was founded as, and he's so passionate about this whole project. It feels like it comes straight from his heart, and he's so proud not only of what he's made but of what everyone in the company has done to make it what it is today. So yeah, it's a really inspiring conversation. Thrilled to have Guy speaking to us, and just thank you, Guy, and to everybody for supporting, listening, talking, and yeah, without further ado, let's get on to our awesome interview with Guy Withers.
Well, we are really thrilled today to be joined with Guy Withers, who is the artistic director of the Waterperry Opera Festival in Oxfordshire. So welcome, Guy. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for having me on. I am very well, thank you. It's been a lovely long day working in the office, getting things ready for the festival. But it's a pleasure to come now and speak to you both.
Awesome. So where's your office for the festival based?
It's a floating office, and the reason for that being that we do stuff obviously at Waterperry at the festival, but also this year for the first time we're touring, and so I've had offices all over the country, sometimes on trains as well, just depending where I am trying to organise things. So it can be here in London, which is where I live, but also I go to Waterperry regularly too. But today was London, tomorrow or Thursday it'll be at Waterperry, so back and forth, round and round.
Oh, that's really fun.
So busy.
Yeah.
So busy.
So Waterperry is celebrating its 5th anniversary this coming year, is that right?
It is 5 years. I certainly feel 5 years older, for sure. But 5 years, very special. I mean, when we started, we only thought, we'll give this a go, see if it feels right for everybody. Does people want this? Does it feel good? And now we found ourselves 5 years later and trying to think about the next 5 years, what we're doing year 10, really. So that's very exciting.
That's amazing.
The programme that you've got coming up seems really, really inventive and inspired. Like, when I think of an opera festival, I'm like, it's just going to be same old, same old. You've got 8 productions this year. Yeah. But is there an overview of the festival that you'd like to just put out there?
Yeah, of course. As you rightly say, Waterperry Opera Festival was no ordinary opera festival, and that is in many different ways. I think twofold, really, in that the sort of work we put on is very different. Yes, it's opera, but also it depends what you define as opera. I think it just means music drama, really. So, gosh, what can that be? Everything from we stage song cycles to obviously a few big grand opera things, but even then we try to look outside the major canon, do a lot of contemporary work, and we do lots of things for families too. So as an example, this year we're bringing back our Peter and the Wolf, which is a piece that we have created into a sort of interdisciplinary dance piece. So you've got everything from your major opera in a much more sort of established, okay, here's a big stage, lots of singers, orchestra, all the way down to let's go and see Peter and the Wolf in a garden with a couple of dancers. So it's really, really varied. And we love to explore how we can make anything really a theatrical experience. So that's, I guess, one thing. The second thing that makes it quite different from every other opera festival is that we like to program the whole season like it's an arts festival. And so you can come on a Saturday and you could see 7 different things. Not all the productions that we have on offer, but most of them. And all the way from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m, there's things on. And so you come for a day, almost like you were more at, I guess, Glastonbury than you would be at Glyndebourne, sort of thing.
Wow. I mean, I'm already gagging to know.
Hattie.
As that came out of my mouth, I was like, is that appropriate? No, probably not. I am desperate. Is that probably
It's not getting better, Hattie.
I'd love to know more about... No, I'd really love to know more.
I'm going to have to edit this.
Yeah.
Okay, let me start again. You gave such a wonderful overview and now I'm just like taking it down a few pegs. No, I'd love to know more about the inspiration behind this idea. Can maybe just you give us a bit of a background about you and, the vision for the festival or even the vision that you had for your life?
Oh, wow. Vision I had for my life. Gosh.
We get deep, it's just part of it.
Wow. God,
I'm sorry, you're going to have to deal with it.
Never thought I'd have a vision for my life. I don't think I have a vision for my life, other than to say that I love exploring ideas. I love exploring new things. And I think I never liked sitting still. I think my colleagues at Waterperry will definitely agree that every single year I like to push the boat into even more uncharted waters, sometimes too much, but I think that's great because it means people are challenged with their ideas and you really encourage artists and audiences to make a step just outside of their comfort zone is something a bit different. Anyway, going back to your actual question, introduction of me. So I grew up singing. That's really how I came to opera. I was a choir boy. I loved singing. My parents didn't know anything about music at all, and they were very supportive. Thanks to them for sort of getting me lessons and putting me in the church choir. I also did lots of local theatre too. So I think I fell in love with both music and theatre separately, two different things. And they didn't come together until I was in my teenage years. I loved singing as a teenager, and I always thought it as an extracurricular thing. I thought I'd get a proper job, inverted commas. And my parents had no idea how to become a professional musician. They worked normal jobs, like my mother was a policewoman, my father worked for Royal Mail. So they were like, musician, great. I guess you'll learn instrument maybe, or join a choir. They had no idea how you pursue it. So, but they were very, very supportive, regardless of that. And at 15, I discovered opera. I went to see an opera. My parents took me, and I was like, "This is incredible." I just fell in love with it. My idea of what opera was completely blown about the water. I thought opera was, big stuffy outfits, lots of fat people singing on the stage, and I'd be really bored. In fact, the production of Rigoletto that I saw was set in Manhattan in the 1920s, and there were gangsters with guns, and I was 15 thinking, this is bloody cool, I want to do this. I want to see more of this sort of stuff. And I didn't really know how passionate and visceral it could be. And that just set me on a journey. And so I then went to university and did music. And then as a singer, primarily, I then said, well, I want to go and try and pursue a singing career. So I eventually went to Royal Academy of Music and did a master's. But all the way through that, I had a feeling of wanting to make things happen. And the singing was quite structured. So you join a choir or you do a solo. It was very much you sort of take your part and you do that. But I was really interested in, okay, well, how can we get these ideas to happen? My friends wanted to do things, whatever. So I started producing at university and founded the Opera Society at Cardiff, where I was, and then started to direct and produce shows and make choirs and organize concerts and just really got a buzz out of making things happen. And I guess seeing little niches that I didn't see filled, ideas I had. And so, over the last 10 years, I've really nurtured both the singing part of me, but also the part of me that really likes to see interesting things happen and to make them happen, and to involve my friends and my colleagues in making that happen. And so Waterperry has sort of been the combination of me over the last 10 years, producing here and there, and then suddenly saying, this is where I'm landing here, this opera festival, and this is my opportunity to, I guess, make a difference as much as make the work that I've always wanted to make.
I think it's incredible and obviously quite a, not typical path, but for a lot of musicians, I think for a lot of people listening, they might not be surprised that, maybe that's a path that someone that has become, creating an opera festival would have taken. But I suppose my question is, were there things in other opera festivals, not naming names, but maybe things that you'd always slightly thought, not maybe I don't like this, but I want to do this a bit differently?
Absolutely. I think there's the obvious things that people can all agree on, which are affordable ticket prices, removing barriers to access to the arts. So if you're going to put something on, how do you make sure that it is at the same time as enticing and interesting as possible, as well as removing any barriers that people might have to accessing in the first place? And that can be anything from what language is it in? Is it in the vernacular? People are going to feel like they can immediately understand it. To, are the tickets really expensive? Can I afford to go? Not to say that going to an opera festival isn't a really special thing and therefore should have value associated with it, because I think that's important to say as well. But, if you're going to buy a ticket for something, whether you're going to an Adele concert or you're going to go to an opera, I think it's a special occasion, and that's fine. But you also need to make sure that it's within reach of as many people as you possibly can. So I think that's said for. I believe in that. I think most people in the sector believe in that. In terms of the unique part of what Waterperry offers, I think I really believe in the intimate, immersive, and sort of visceral nature of being really close up to the action in a place that's also really interesting and really evocative. So outdoor spaces, indoor spaces, places that aren't concert halls or theatres, which I personally find quite clinical and quite, I guess, rigid. And so when the opportunity to start Waterperry sort of happened, I looked at it as a wonderful opportunity to create stages, to create sets in lots of different and interesting outdoor and indoor spaces, and really put the audience as close to the artist as possible. One of our objectives as an organization, and you can read our website, is about bridging the gap between audiences and artists. And I think that can be done in many different ways, through discussion and through sort of a connection. But ultimately, I love putting audiences right in the middle of what's going on, and for them to be whisked away and to just feel like they had the most perfect personal experience they can ever have. So creating productions in woodlands or in fields or in ballrooms or in dining rooms or whatever, or, you know, it could be in a car park, you never know, but you're not going to get that experience anywhere else. And I think that's what really excites me.
I feel like the past few years has been quite, I was going to say trendy. I don't mean trendy. I mean, like, there's been a lot more awareness of accessibility and making things a bit more kind of innovative. Maybe that's not just the past few years. Anyway, what I wanted to ask is, what has been your biggest challenge in terms of making it something that bridges gaps?
That's a really great question. I think it depends who you're talking about, because accessibility in terms of audiences can be many different things. It can be about physical accessibility. Can they access the places we're taking them? As soon as you say, oh, we're going to take you to a woodland and really immerse you, you say, well, how are you going to get to that woodland? And if you're in a wheelchair or you have a problem walking, how are you going to get there? And so that's a challenge. So, and also we are in a rural space, so you can't just get your bus there. You can actually, but you can't, you know, it's much more difficult than just rocking up out of the tube and walking to the Royal Opera House. So there are benefits to being where we are, but also there are challenges there. I also think that how you choose to present the work and the sort of atmosphere you put around the work is really important. If you make people feel like they belong, they have ownership, that Waterperry is about them, for them, then that is, I guess, the greatest way in which you can make people feel like not only do they feel like they have been thought about, but that actually that it is absolutely for them. You're not removing the barrier, you're welcoming them into the door and into the room with you, literally. So there's that. And then in terms of wider accessibility, you know, we have looked recently, we've done projects with BSL interpreters. We've talked to local children, local communities. How can we, I guess, step out from where we are as a site and start to engage more widely as a sector? How can Waterperry be part of the world and I guess the arts generally? So yeah, that and I guess building not just audiences for the future, but also maybe building and developing artists for the future or other people for the future. So that's sort of part of our remit. And then in terms of artists, accessibility is really difficult because, you know, when you're starting a company that you can't maybe pay everybody the rates that the Royal Opera House pays, or there are things you can't do that others can do because your resources are limited, or you haven't got that much experience, or your networks are small. So when you start, that's the biggest challenge because you don't have the years of support and resources behind you. So that's really tough too. And I think that's a big challenge that lots of young companies try to overcome, is how can we make sure that our work, our company is accessible to all the artists we want to work with too. And that's tricky.
Yeah, like I hadn't even thought about accessibility to the artists. But yeah, you often hear, like, I don't know, I've done quite a few gigs where I'm getting paid to do the gig, but the singers are paying to do the gig. And you're like, wait, what? And that's a big thing. And I wonder whether your experience as a singer yourself has informed your role now.
Hugely, absolutely. And I think that's relatively unique. There are a few artistic directors and CEOs that are artists first. But if you look at the big opera houses, they're mostly directors, or they've moved through producing elsewhere. I feel like I'm an artist first and foremost. And so I really understand what people are going through. And I've struggled through my singing career that I have or have had as well. And I've been that person that's paid to be part of something, thinking this is going to be great, but thinking, gosh, I'm lucky that I can pay to be part of this training. Who isn't getting this training because of that? So that's a real important thing. You know, accessibility needs in terms of travel, accommodation, where are these people coming from? We started a young artist program the first year. It's also 5 years old this year, and part of the remit of that program was to deliver something that I wish that I had when I was 21, 22. When I came out of university, I knew nothing about how to get into the sector. I felt like I needed more skills, more resources, a network, but I didn't have the money to do those things. And sometimes conservatoires can look a bit out of reach, or places that you don't necessarily feel like you belong. So part of, I guess, a remit of what we're trying to do with the festival, but also Young Artists Program, is create a place where people are safe, supported, and at the same time, they don't lose out. So we pay for their travel, we pay for their accommodation, we give them a stipend to look after themselves while they're on our program. And I guess it's just creating opportunity where people who otherwise would not be able to access the arts at all. So trying to be part of a small solution in how can we both create and develop accessibility for young people coming through, helping to nurture a more diverse, complete sector of artists, as well as how can we also diversify and encourage new audiences to come to see that work. So it's twofold, and I really believe in that. But it's tricky. It has challenges, and I'm not sure I found the solution. And the solution won't just be me either, or what Waterperry does. It will be a whole sector initiative.
I'm really curious to hear about the things for you that have been like, oh, this is why I do it. Like, I can't wait for the next year because of this element to it. You know, what has been like the most joyful part of it for you in terms of that?
That's a really interesting question. And I think what's really important to remember is the moment of interaction. And I spent my entire year planning, fundraising, thinking, in spreadsheets on trains, and it's for a really good cause and you really believe in it. But I don't think you see that until you see the moment when music happens, where theatre happens, where art is created and audiences' faces light up. And I think the moments where I feel most relieved and inspired are when audience members come to me and they say, I've never seen anything like that before. It's amazing. It's not at all what I expected, and it's amazing. And I just feel uplifted. I feel like they've gone and had a great time, but also they go home and they feel like, I feel great today. I feel great today because I had a wonderful time. And I think it's those moments that make me think, gosh, this is really worth doing, as well as creating great art and believing that I think the work we do is really awesome, and that I want to be really innovative in the opera sector, sure, and that I want to provide great entertainment for lots of audiences, great, and I want to help train young artists, fantastic. But I think we all do it because we really believe in the power of music and theatre to transcend. And that I remember being a young person and seeing that opera and going, amazing, I want to do that. I just feel awesome now. And I think I want people, every single person that comes to Waterperry to feel that. And when that happens, people come to me and they say, I just feel inspired. I feel uplifted. This is great. It's a surprise to me. That's what makes it worth doing all this hard work.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I wonder whether, because for me, I find that there's a certain sense of like, your work is so impermanent. And I wonder whether there's a certain sense of satisfaction of doing something that feels more documentable. I don't know where this question has come from.
Oh, I don't know what you mean. That's cool.
Like,
really
I don't
cool
know,
idea.
It's, as a trumpet player, obviously I enjoy doing concerts, but if somebody asks what I do out of the blue, all I can do is play in the state that I'm in right now, and that's me being like, this is me. But I wonder whether having the joint thing of being a musician and somebody who creates these massive projects, is there like a sense of satisfaction in, here's what I do and I can show you?
That's a really interesting question, because I'm not sure you can capture what happens in that moment, even if you try to. We have created loads of trailers. People can go on our website now and they can see the trailers for this year or previous years, and highlights reels, and it gives a sense of what it's like. You can see what it looks like. But I think we'd all agree that you could take a video of what it looks like to be at Glastonbury, but I don't, it must be so different to be there. I've not been to Glastonbury Festival, but I can imagine you can, we all know the difference between watching something and experiencing it, right? And I think great to have a way of documenting and showing and sharing that. And I think that encourages more people to be part of that, but ultimately you can't capture it. And I struggle with this because when I'm trying to, say, develop fundraising or partners or whatever, and I try to tell them what Waterperry is about, they go, sounds cool, but I don't really understand. I don't really get it. Why you're taking a piano outside in the wood? Why are you only doing it for this? Or I don't really get it. It's like these other festivals, but not, and that's hard, particularly when you're talking to established opera audiences or people who know the sector. It's not quite the same. And so I'm always saying, come to Waterperry, come and let me show you. And then they get it. And then they can be advocates for what we do. I find otherwise it's very, very difficult. As great as photographs and reviews are, you can't really do it unless you're there. And I guess because it's not a sterile environment like a theatre or concert hall, I always say it's about Glyndebourne. Glyndebourne's great, and all the festivals are great too, but effectively it's a theatre in the middle of the countryside, yes. But when you walk into that theatre, you could be at the Collie, you could be anywhere else. And so you're seeing a production, it could be any theatre, pretty much. Others might say, well, it's different theatres. But I think ultimately you're entering a theatre space. If you come and see a show at Waterperry, it could be raining one day, it could be boiling sun, it could be a hailstorm, and that will affect what happens. We did Hansel and Gretel last year. We basically created a stage in the woodland, and Hansel and Gretel took the children off into the wood, and we had it was amazing. We had a piano that stayed in the wood, so it was all very, very sort of tactile and very, very very sort of adventurous. Every single day it was different. Some days it was wet, and so it felt very sort of boggy and murky, and other days very windy, and so the rustling of the trees sort of meant it feel very sort of spooky another way. And that's a set piece you cannot recreate. And so in that way, even the different shows are completely different. And even if you try and capture that, you won't be able to see it because you'll be feeling cold, or you'll feel like rain on your jumper or whatever. And you can't bottle that unless you do it. So it's that visceral experience that really excites me. And so to answer your question, yes, you can bottle a little bit of it and show people, but it's not the same as coming. And although I feel very proud of the legacy we've built, and I can look back and say, wow, 5 years, 19 productions or something that we've done in those 5 years, it doesn't feel real until you're there. It just feels like a dream.
What a great answer.
Yeah. You've talked about it being in the middle of the countryside, but what, without giving the magic away, what do people see when they come? Is it all the performances open air, or is there like a tent, or like?
Great question. Okay.
How does it look? How
does it look? Well, that's great. So firstly, you turn up at a country estate. It's also a garden centre and a tea shop. Cool. So it's a very sort of domestic, I guess, down to earth sort of place, because
my mother would love it.
Yeah, you can buy a rose bush, but you could also have a cream tea at the same time. And the thing is, actually, to centre the community in that way, so that's great. So if you turn up, you park in the car park. It's clearly a country estate, like we would know if you went to a National Trust property. So again, not your typical theatre experience. And then, yes, you'll walk down the avenue towards the house, and you will see a number of marquees with different things marked on them, like, a hub space or box office or whatever, or bar. And so those spaces are there. And so the sort of thing that you probably would imagine at any sort of festival, not opera festival, but other festivals, you can imagine. So yes, you turn up and you come to the box office, you get your wristbands for the different shows you're going to, you might get a programme, blah, blah, blah. And then one of our stewards will come to you and say, what are you coming to see? And you'll say, I'm coming to see blah, 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 famous opera or whatever. And it's great, well, follow me. And so the stewards will lead you, and it depends where. And we take over the entire site and build theatres and spaces and all sorts of nooks and crannies around the site. You might be taken into a wood to go and see an opera, or into a ballroom to see something else or whatever. And it really depends on which day, at what time, and on what you're seeing. So this year, for instance, Mansfield Park is returning. It's one of our favourite productions. It's been going 5 years now. That takes place in Waterperry House, and we take over the house, and it becomes the set for the Regency period Mansfield Park.
That is cool.
It's really cool. Again, if you like Austen or you like sort of Regency period, you step in and everyone is covered in head to toe in period costume, including the pianists who poor musicians. I know you're both musicians. I love integrating musicians into shows because I feel like they often get forgotten. I love being drawing the performative aspect of musicians into the pieces and really, really celebrating that. So for Mansfield Park, the two pianists that play on the piano are both dressed as footmen, and so they welcome in the audience and they talk and everyone's in their costumes and yes, so into the ballroom. That's a very different experience to, say, our Pete and the Wolf, also at Waterperry this summer, where you get taken into the gardens, into a secluded area by the tree, by the pond, and the dancers tell you the story there. So it depends on the show, depends on the day, what your experience is going to be. And as I said, depending on what the weather's like, it can be a glorious day, it could be a bit cold, and that will affect what happens. I think it's very exciting.
It's striking me how, like, you seem to be really, like, you don't own this festival with, like, both hands grabbed onto it, like, trying to control it. Like, I don't know, I feel like you're very much keen for it to be a natural, organic kind of experience, which is
a shared experience as well.
Yeah, it's a new thing to hear someone talk about it like that, which is awesome.
It really is a shared experience, because I think, as many performers will agree, and hopefully you both do, that if you have one person in the audience or you have 1,000 people, it will feel different. And you have to, I guess, that the art exists between the two. And so, yeah, you have to let go. I mean, I try to set up everything literally, but also, I guess, as a metaphor, for the art to happen and for people to enjoy things. So you have to relinquish control, and also working outdoors is really tricky. And so you're having to look after lots of people, artists as well as audiences, and guide them through what they might not sure is going to happen, So yeah, it's sort of you're a caretaker, really. That's how I see the role.
I think, yeah, it's often when we talk to someone that's a CEO,
mm-hmm.
like, you just imagine, I guess maybe it comes from your role as a singer as well, that you haven't been a business director first,
mm-hmm.
That your artistry comes through kind of first and foremost, which is really interesting.
Thank you.
How did you learn to do fundraising and stuff? Was it just on the job?
Yeah, that was my next question.
Like, we're trying to do stuff at the moment and we're like, oh, you hate this.
I'm so bad at asking for money.
One thing I will say is that I started out wanting to create opera and theatre and music. I didn't start out wanting to be a CEO, but unfortunately, to make sure that happens, you have to become a CEO. And so I've really spent the last 5 years learning how to be a CEO. I always knew that I could pick the right singers and get the right people and directors together and make the show. I could always make the show, make sure that could happen, but I didn't know how to create a company. So that's the journey I've been through, and including fundraising, including strategy and logistics and team building. And, there's no training for what I do. You can't go to like CEO college. I guess you can go to business school, but I don't run a company like many other CEOs do. And even Waterperry Opera Festival is very unique in the opera sphere anyway. It's not like running like an orchestra or even a big opera company. It's quite different. So fundraising, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of learning from mentors, people who would speak to me. I always try to speak to as many people as possible who've done it before me, because they have the wealth of knowledge. But it's a lot of trial and error, and a lot of speaking from the heart, actually, I find. So whether you're talking to a donor and you're trying to, as I mentioned before, bottle a little bit of that magic and sell it to them, it just takes time. And you certainly get used to asking for money, because I think if you believe in what you're doing and you know it's really good, and if you don't get the money, it's not going to happen, then you soon get out of your mind the thought of, oh, I feel awkward about asking for money, because you're just thinking, I need the money to make sure it happens. And I know if you give it to me, it's going to go to a fantastic cause, much better than perhaps other causes, I don't know. And so you get used to that. So I do quite a lot of that. And I try to develop relationships with donors and people who, from the very beginning of the festival, have really invested in many different ways in what we do. And hopefully they see the benefit, they see how special it is, and they become advocates and start to, I guess, become ambassadors and encourage others to get involved, just to come, or just to, help out in however they can. And then other fundraising, trusts and foundations, Arts Council, that takes a lot of time. And you need to have loads of things sorted, like what's your mission and what's your vision and what's your constitution and what's your objectives, all these sorts of things. And so that's been a big learning curve. But eventually we got there, and we've grown and grown and grown, but it's a lot of trial and error. And my only experience really is fundraising for opera and for music education, really. So I can't offer any immediate advice on fundraising for a podcast. But it's really interesting, and I actually think it's one thing that a lot of people in the sector could wish that they knew more about. How can I have the initiative to make my own projects, for instance. I want to see this happen. I want to start this ensemble. I want to do this, but I don't know how to make it happen. And I know it's really good, but how do I do that? If only there was a place where that could happen. And not just that, but, how do I do my self-assessment tax return? How do I know how to get a business account? All that sort of stuff. They don't teach you that at college. And so that's really important stuff that actually I think is stopping a lot of people with great ideas doing things. So we try to do a little bit of that at Waterperry in the Young Artists Programme, but it's difficult. And luckily I had people around me. I built a board of people who could support me, and the rest of the team. But it's hard. Effectively, trial and error, learning a lot. And now it's mostly what I do. I sit in front of my laptop and I just try and think about the health of Waterperry. How can we, as I said, think about the next 5 years rather than just this year? Because if I can do 5 more years, I know I can reach a lot more people.
Wow, yeah.
You talk about, trial and error a lot. And because this is things musicians don't talk about, would you feel comfortable talking about some of the errors?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, there's a lot of...
Yes, Rebecca, I'm so glad you asked the question.
No, there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk in so many ways. There's artistic risk, because you're saying, okay, director, designer, musical director, cast, go off and do this show. I really believe in you. That it's going to look great. I mean, I'm going to be great, and audience is going to love it. And I would say almost the entirety of the time it comes back really well, and everybody loves it. But sometimes, things happen, and you have to deal with people, and deal with working with teams, and that's where it gets really rewarding, but also really difficult, because lots of people are working together, lots of freelancers coming together to work on a project, and there can be tensions, and that can be really tricky. And so again, a lot of my time when I'm not looking at money, I'm looking at the people, how I can support them and deal with the things that do go wrong, when people aren't supported, or there's been miscommunication, or there's been a fallout, and that happens all the time, like it would be in any situation. So that's the tough stuff, and that's where you learn very quickly how to handle that. And you have to just be accountable for your mistakes. Whether I haven't been there for an artist that needed someone to be there, and I'm ultimately responsible as a person at the top of the pecking order, or there's been a mistake in the contract and someone's been left hanging or something, that's on me. And you learn from those. I've learned something over the last 5 years, and that is, it's not the mistake you make, it's how you then deal with that mistake. Because I will make lots of mistakes, because I'm learning, and people do, and that's fine. But as long as you say, look, I did it wrong, and I'm sorry, and it wasn't malicious, here's how I'm going to make it right for you. That's been a really, really good learning curve for me. But there are lots of things that have gone wrong for sure. And money as well. We're a growing organization, and you put a lot of money into a project, and then maybe no one comes to see it, or that's really scary.
I'd give up.
Yeah, I know, and that's really scary, because you're putting your life and soul into, I love this project, I want everyone to see it, and then one person comes. Thankfully that's not happened much, but it could do, particularly when you do something really wacky. You go, no, thank you. And then you think, oh gosh, well, I'll just do all the normal stuff then, because people want that. So that's really, really tricky to sort of feel like, actually, I believe in this vision. I believe in making this work and doing these things. So you've got to really, I guess, encourage people to come to you. It's tough. It's tough for sure. But yeah, I mean, other mistakes, I guess, trying to put a piano in a boggy woodland, I wouldn't recommend that.
I was worrying about that.
Yeah, that's tricky. Trying to get, because of course, and this is one thing I didn't really realize when I started an opera festival, that it's not the middle of the city. So when night comes, there's no light at all in the middle of forest, and so okay, so you need torches to do things, and then if it rains, okay, how are you going to get the lorry or the van with the piano you've just bought down this muddy path through a wood to get? I know. So there's things like that, and then of course you provide this piano for a lovely pianist, and they say, "What is this?" And I say, "I know." And I think part of it is just trying to get everybody on board with the vision and understanding that it's not always going to go quite as planned, but if we get there in the end, it's going to be great. So it's a lot of those logistical things. And again, I haven't been an expert in putting together marquees or organizing lorries, but I've had to very quickly. Last year, I'll tell you the funny thing that went wrong. Here we go. We had a lighting designer design the lighting for our production of Elixir of Love on budget. Great, fantastic. It got about a month before, and my production manager said, "This light, how is it going to get to Waterperry, this lighting?" And I said, "Oh, it will be on the van, won't it? The van's on the hire quote." And he said, No, we paid just for the lights, but the lights are going to be in London. We need to pick them up. That's not included in the price. And then we suddenly went to like loads of lorry quoting, to get quotes, and they were like, yeah, we can do it for £1,000. I thought, oh my God. So I had to crawl to my board and say, I need £1,000, please, so I can get the lights to make sure that the show's going to be seen by everybody, And so sometimes those things happen. Hattie, your face looks like you're in terror of that.
It just seems like nothing will stop you, Guy. Because I would honestly have ran away and cried and just not come back.
And it's tough. It's really tough, And I know you guys talk about mental health. That is really hard. I feel the personal responsibility to make sure that everybody gets paid. It all happens. And if it doesn't, it's on me. And that's really tough. Luckily, I've got a really supportive and really dedicated team that also work really hard. And we're all workaholics too. So taking breaks and going on holiday, that's as important as making sure that everything comes in on time. But also having people around you, and that's people like my fiance, my friends, also a board. And we have a non-executive board because we're a charity. So lots of people who on this board can help support. They can look over a contract if I need some help, or they might be able to, take something off my hands if I need to, because I'm young and my team is young and we're small and we're really ambitious, but we don't always know what we're doing. And we need support. And that support isn't always in the professional sphere. It can be personally. And there are so many times we've been at Waterperry and we're up late because the marquee's got a hole in it and it's pouring with rain onto the stage. How are we going to resolve that? It has to be resolved. And so you have to make it happen. So I've learned to just, I guess, make it happen somehow and believe that it will happen. You have to embrace the fear.
Once the festival's over, do you find it hard to not jump straight into the next year's swing of things, or do you take a break?
I do take a break. I have to, because I really need it, physically as well as mentally. My fiance will tell you that I will finish and I will literally almost fall asleep for days because I've spent everything. In terms of the next year, I've tried to, and this has taken 5 years, I've tried to move to a system where I think about next year now. So in fact, I've got a meeting with a board member this next week, and I'm meeting my musical director next week to talk about next year. Can we get plans for next year down? Just so that I haven't got to think about it immediately after the festival, And so if we get things moving, I can then take a week off and I can go on holiday, or I can just stay in bed and watch something on Netflix. But as much as I really don't want to touch anything Waterperry related for a while, the itch comes back really quickly. Really quickly, I want to get back and I want to think about the future. I think that makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. That if my body and my brain is saying, yeah, I need a break, but a week, I really want to get back in and start again. That's really good. If I haven't got that, then I shouldn't be here. So yeah, but breaks are really important. The only other time I get a break is really at Christmas.
Of course.
Because casting happens immediately, and we've got to, it takes a long time to put an opera on, and the Royal Opera House will take years to do it. We just take a year, so it's a long process.
Wow. I didn't realise that, to be honest. I was thinking you were going to say, yeah, have a break and then start again in January.
Oh gosh. No.
That's how I would run it. Like everyone have 3 months off, 4 months off.
People don't run businesses like we run the podcast.
Oh, fine. I forgot. That is so interesting. I mean, I'm really interested now in you as an artist and a singer, because it's so clear that you've been put on this earth to run Waterperry Festival. It's like,
thank you, Hattie.
No, seriously. But also, it's, you know, as I know, my brother was a chorister. That doesn't leave you that like innate musicality, and you know, it's been with you for a long time. You know, can you talk about how you stay artistically kind of satisfied, or how do you sing as well, or you know, how do you balance those two?
That is a great question, and I always think about that, because as I said, I think of myself first and foremost as an artist, and then as somebody who's a producer. And you're right, singing has very strict rules, particularly being a chorister, which I was, and I was a chorus girl and lay clerk as well. That life wasn't really for me, I must admit. I loved the singing, but didn't like the strict rules. And I've now run a festival that doesn't really have rules. So, and even, you know, being at a conservatoire and doing a master's, I felt like a black sheep. I didn't quite feel like I fitted in there either. But I do miss trading the boards. I love the buzz of performing and being on stage and telling stories. I love telling stories, and watching people perform at Waterperry and not being part of that, I guess, very intimately. I get sad. I think I miss it. I miss it. So how do I keep that alive? Well, I still sing a bit, but I haven't got a lot of time. So I miss being on stage, but I don't have time to do it. So I still do some concerts, and that's great. But I do direct, so I enjoy that. And so the Peter and the Wolf that I directed last year and is reviving, that was I directed that, and there was a part of me that just felt like that needed to happen. That piece, that production needs to be out in the world, and I wanted to see it happen. So being connected that way by directing dancers and directing musicians, that makes me feel connected to the art. But performing, less and less so, unfortunately. And maybe that's because you can't do it. You can't do both. I think if I sang at Waterperry, if it was a vehicle for me as a singer, I would be too much entwined. I need to stay distant, because I need to be the person at the head of the organization, that if something happens, I need to be able to step up and make a decision, or stay impartial, or be a figurehead. I can't be also singing in the show. So that's really important for me, to know that it's not my place.
I really like the idea, well, not the idea, the fact of you know, having a very involved directive role in what you do can, you know, create the satisfaction in maybe a different way to which it did in the past, but in a way that's still, you know, very tangible to you. Because I actually feel like I'm becoming more and more going that way myself with what we do, you know, on the podcast, and even what I do in my day job, in the music publishers. Like, I do feel like, okay, I'm not playing anymore, but it's like a new kind of artistic satisfaction through this. Like, yeah, I feel like that's one thing that's not massively much discussed, of there being an ability for us to have this, you know, very nice experience of being a performer, and then maybe thinking, this is now my time to become something slightly different. It's almost like a tennis player retiring, becoming a tennis coach, but not quite.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is a different thing, isn't it? But they still have that same satisfaction from coaching. Anyway, I don't know if that made any sense.
It does. It does make sense. You feel connected. You're still being part of the magic, but in a different way. And I think I'm okay with that. I miss it. I miss being on stage, but I also know that actually I think my place is off of it. And helping others to be on it instead.
When you do sing, how does it feel going back to it?
Now it feels like picking up a bike after years of not riding one, which is thrilling, but also really scary, because you're like, how do I move my legs and how do I steer? And so I might do the odd concert or something, which is really exciting, and I love it. And I guess I do it now for more the pleasure, as much as, you know, it helps as a part of my career. yeah, I feel equal amount sort of unprepared and also excited. Whereas before, I think when I did a lot more singing, it felt like a job. And so in a way, I get best of both worlds because I get to step up there and do my singing, and it might be the only concert I have within months. And so it feels special, and doesn't feel like a job. But I also do feel rusty, and I certainly do feel rusty. I feel like, oh gosh, where are my cufflinks, and how do I do this again? I haven't sung this in ages, And so there is something about you need to keep practicing, literally, but also you need to keep, I guess, on that train. If you're a musician, you're a performer, you need to keep that part of your brain, your body working and going. And I think you lose a bit of it if you don't exercise it. So particularly the singing, the voice can get literally a bit rusty. So keeping that fresh is tricky for sure.
Does it feel different apart from the rusty side of it? But like psychologically, does performing feel different to you now?
I think I think it gives perspective a bit more. Sort of stepping back in on, if I go on stage again, I can look back at the people organising the concert and sort of think, I know what that's like. The same way where I can look at people who are singing on stage and say, I know what that's like. And so I feel very lucky to be like that. I think there is a wonderful warm glow of organising things, and you get to feel proud, and you get great gratitude and sort of, it feels amazing to make things happen. But there's nothing like the visceral adrenaline rush of performing. And I think that sort of, skydiving feel that you get when you perform, that's an amazing drug. And I really see why people love it. And I loved it too. So yeah, I miss that. I do miss that.
Well, I'm really would love to hear, sort of to finish off a little bit, what is actually, first of all, can you give us the details for the festival? How can people get involved? How can they follow you on social media? That sort of thing, first of all.
Yeah, of course.
And then after that, you can let us know your highlight that you think people should not miss.
Oh, okay, that's gonna be tough because I have to name my favorite child, won't I? That's basically what I have to do.
Yeah.
So Waterperry. Okay, so it's in August this summer, as it always is. It's the 12th to 20th of August this year at Waterperry in Oxfordshire. And there are many different productions you can come and see, but you don't have to necessarily just be an audience member. You can volunteer. You can come and you can be a steward, or you can get involved and you can be part of the festival as well. And if you're an aspiring singer, there's a young artist program to look out for next year. And if you're an artist too, please get in touch. And we have a website, waterperryopera.festival.co.uk, but also we're on all the social media. So Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You can find us there, and keep a lookout because we've got lots of things coming, including our tour of Mansfield Park, which is actually going around the country right this second.
Oh my gosh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. Yeah, so
no, it's not your fault.
No, so Mansfield Park, which I mentioned before, in our ballroom, we're taking it on tour this year for the first time.
Oh wow!
And so
Congrats.
Thank you. We've just been in Dorset. We're going to be in Newbury next week, and then we're going to be in all around the country, basically. And it's
all the Austin places.
All the Austin places, and we're taking it to all these beautiful sort of period spots, so ballrooms and galleries and old manor houses. So
are you going to Bath?
We wish. If there was somebody in Bath listening in on your podcast who has
there will be.
a big, great, but if they have a big period ballroom,
yeah, that sounds like all our listeners.
Then that person definitely get in touch.
Please, because
we should do an advert.
There we go.
Actually, my best friend Jasmine's from Bath. But yeah, she doesn't have a ballroom, bless her.
Yet.
But does Jasmine know any ballrooms? Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Does she have any memberships to ballrooms?
Ballrooms.
You'll get there. You'll get to Bath. This has to happen. I'm so inspired.
We'll make it happen.
So there we go.
Well, that's awesome. So to finish off, we have started asking our guests for the little win of the week, or in our case, of the day, because we did this last night. So unless you have one that you're sure of right now, we're happy to go first.
Go first, because I'm trying to think of the things that have happened.
Yeah, so anything that has been like a little victory, however small, that's been like, because we realised that like a lot of the time in this podcast we focus on like very serious topics, quite intense, but like let's finish it off with something a bit more cheerful. So Rebecca, over to you.
My win of the day is that I was going to say I only had 2 coffees, but I'm going to say that I let Stuart, my boyfriend, help me with a bunch of things. Like, he drove me to college and he cooked me dinner, and I wasn't like, no, don't do that. Well, I was a little bit, but I let him do it.
Yeah.
That
That's awesome.
Nice. I'm also just like plugging Stuart. He's
great.
Go Stuart.
He's the best.
Go Stuart.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, Stuart needs an award. That man, he is very nice.
Hattie?
So I've actually had a huge win today at my work. I've just been feeling really anxious about like the next step and everything. And I've realised that as a person, and actually probably like as a woman, a lot of the time we do a lot of hinting. Personally, I'm not very good at asking for what I want or communicating how I feel in a position. As I say, terrible about asking for money. It's kind of the same thing. But today I just had this like real yes moment where they announced to me that they're going to be advertising for an assistant job. And I'm an intern. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to tell the CEO that I'm really interested in the job, that I've no plans for when my internship finishes, and that I'd love to be considered if possible. And for some reason, just saying those words to someone that I've like hugely admired was the most terrifying thing ever, to like advocate for myself or to tell someone what I want or what I'm planning to do. You know, whatever comes of it, I'm like, shit, that is a win. Because I've never spoken like that to someone before, being like, this is actually what I want, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Big win. Big win for a Tuesday.
That's great. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks. What about you, Guy? Have you thought of your win?
I did think of one, but it's a bit heavier. Sorry, is that okay?
No,
it's great.
Heavy, yeah.
Go for it.
Just to say that something really wonderful that happened. So it came out of a sad place, and so we had our first performance in Mansfield Park a couple of days ago, and a week ago, one of our actors' performance went down with COVID. So really sad for her that she couldn't perform, but also it's jeopardizing the entire tour that suddenly one person can't perform. Luckily, we could find somebody to step in. And Mansfield Park's not a really well-known opera. It's not just like, come and step in and sing, you know, Figaro. it's like a really unique thing. But we found somebody, a young singer, and what was really amazing for them was they had learnt the role before, but because of COVID, their production was cancelled. So they learnt it, they spent all this time in 2020 learning this role, and it was cancelled, and that was their experience. And it just happened that the role we needed was the one that she had learnt. And so she could have her debut of the role. She came and sang it. And I just felt so pleased for her that she finally was able to sing the role that she put so much time and effort into learning, and that we could give her that. And that's like something so sad, having one of our singers go down, that we could welcome somebody new to the family. It's great.
Oh, amazing.
That's so great.
I want to cry.
But Guy, the fact that your win was about someone else is just
it wasn't about me. Yeah.
I just can't with you. This has been too wholesome, this conversation, I swear.
Yeah, this has been really lovely.
It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. You have been such a lovely guest. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, both of you. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
If you like this podcast, why not check us out on basically anywhere that you get your podcasts, or at TMDTA Podcast on any of the socials, or our website www.thingsmusiciansdon'ttalkabout.com. See you next time.